One of the issues that you have noted is the need for regulatory authorities, including the FDA, to provide further clarifications on the use of real-world evidence as they make judgments on approving new indications or a new drug. What specific clarifications would be helpful from the US FDA that manufacturers and researchers can use that will help them understand the guidepost?
So the FDA has put out very general statements about the reliability and accuracy of data as measures of data quality. But they haven't really gone down into the weeds to tell you what does that exactly mean. So we have had many articles published and groups brought together to talk about what data quality is. And there are many logic checks that people use in order to look at the degree of missingness, the degree of longitudinality. Are there gaps in the data over time that you should know about? Are there numbers that are out of range and therefore need to be corrected? What do you do with missing data? Do you censor the data, or do you use multiple imputation to replace the missing data? There were many checks like this. The FDA hasn't weighed in on what kind of quality checks you need to do to establish what is the overall level of quality of the data set. Mm-hmm. They also have said that they want to be able to verify the data. And they haven't been clear about what that means. This gets back to what I talked about traceability. In RCTs, you can get back to the original case report form. Does the FDA need to get back to the original electronic health record? Or does it have to be able to get back to the original data source to see how it was put together and understand how it was curated? That remains to be clarified. And then the definition about what fit for purpose needs more discussion. We know that fit for purpose is to a certain extent bespoke. It depends on the question that you're asking. If you're doing a descriptive study of treatment patterns or natural history, you probably don't need the AAA plus quality data that you need if you want to show that you can draw a causal inference and that drug X causes some outcome Y. Mm-hmm. And so if fit for purpose is bespoke, what are the criteria that requires it to be much more rigorous, or will accept less rigorous conditions? Mm-hmm. And some of that has to do with, as we talked about, context. What are the treatment alternatives? How serious is the condition, the unmet medical need, et cetera? And then what about the use of RWE when it's an adjunct to RCTs, and when can it be used in the absence of RCTs? So right now we're mostly talking about the use of RWE as an adjunct to RCTs. You have some RCTs that got the product on the market to start, and then you add the RWE to increase our insight, much like you did with the example you talked about in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. But there will be cases in the future where we might find drugs that were already approved for one purpose may have a totally different purpose that is discovered by real-world evidence. Do we need to go back and do an RCT? That remains to be seen. And what's complicating this even further has been the increasing use of the accelerated approval process by the FDA. And the FDA more recently with some of the Alzheimer's drugs are mandating that they need to have follow-up RCTs. There's some evidence, weak evidence that these drugs improve some of the biomarkers for Alzheimer's. There's also some evidence that they cause some side effects, and the magnitude of that side effect problem is also unclear. But they've been approved because of this large unmet medical need. Now, these RCTs can take 7 to 9 years to complete. In the meantime, we can spend billions of dollars, depending on how many people get these drugs, and because of the need. What about mandating registries, saying that if you're going to launch a product, everyone who gets that product has to be enrolled in a registry? Or we say this is a disease that needs to be more thoroughly followed, and so we're going to enroll everybody with a particular disease in a registry. Or if that is too hard to implement, will we start mandating the collection of real-world data from all of these patients and collecting that centrally so we can begin to analyzing that? These are questions that need to be thought out. You want to get, I applaud the FDA because they want to inspire and promote innovation, particularly for diseases that are terrible and don't have good treatments. On the other hand, we also want to be mindful about how we do that and make sure we're getting the information as rapidly as possible to assure us that the benefit risk profiles of these drugs are what we think they are.
So do you think that it is an appropriate thing for the FDA to have an internal dialogue or a dialogue with their stakeholders about the cost effectiveness of an RCT versus a real world evidence study?
I don't know if that's, I think it's always good for the FDA and the sponsors and also the data holders to have a good conversation. That needs to happen anyway, as we talk about modus of operandi, about how real world data will be made available to the FDA so that they can have that traceability, and also so that the FDA can get a sense of the quality of different data sources. Whether or not that group will make a decision about whether you need to do an RCT or not, that's a matter for public discourse. And it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. And you may get experts who say, absolutely, before I do this, I want to have an RCT. Or others might say, I think we have enough, and I think we can get the supplementary evidence through real world evidence. But I don't know that there is a simple, easy answer for this. And I don't have a formula to provide anybody with. And I think that needs to be done as a transparent discussion so that everyone can see why decisions have been made.